Thank you very much, Sangha. That was a very lovely introduction. And as usual, I begin by just saying how great it is to be in Sheffield again. I say this every time. I love coming to Sheffield. I like the city. I love the centre. Well, I love the city, actually. And had a very pleasant picnic lunch in the Botanic Gardens today with Arya Dasa. That was a sort of surprise that we went there looking at the gorgeous blossoms, so civilized, you know, these people of olden times who created botanic gardens for us. I mean, how magnificent, how public spirited, you know, that is. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And I don't have a lot of time, and in a way, there's a lot that I'd like to say. I think this is the last in your series on wisdom beyond words, which is it's a bit difficult, isn't it, to give a talk on wisdom beyond words. I could cop out and just keep silent, but I won't do that because you've paid good money to be here, and I like talking. Interesting, this language of wisdom beyond words, because wisdom actually does begin with words in Buddhist tradition. There are three kinds of wisdom. First of all, there's the wisdom that comes through hearing, usually translated wisdom that comes through learning, but you need to hear. You need to hear what the words of the Buddha actually are. You need to hear the words of the great teachers and commentators. You know, you need, in other words, to listen to those who have realized wisdom beyond words, because they communicate through language. They communicate in other ways as well, but they do actually communicate through speech. And then, of course, there's the wisdom that comes from reflection, contemplation, deep reflection upon those words. And then there's the wisdom which is turning that into a living experience. And that, you could say, is wisdom beyond words. It's not some weird abstract metaphysic. It's actually you're behaving wisely, unself-consciously. Your being is wisdom. You've turned the words of wisdom into the reality of wisdom. And there's no need to keep anymore those words in your head. When all the answers are in your being, there's no need to keep them in your head. That's what you're aiming for. But you need to begin with the words. So I want you to listen, first of all. I want you to listen. I want you to listen to Padmavajra. I want you to listen to the enlightened speech in the original language as well. So just listen a little bit. Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra. Om Namo Bhagavata Adya Prajna Paramitaya Arya Avalokiteshvaro Bodhisattva Gambhirang Prajna Paramita Jaryang Charamano Yavalokyatisma Panchaskandas Tangscha Swabhavashunyan Vasyatisma Iha Shariputra Rupang Shunyata Shunyataiva Rupang Rupan Pratak Shunyata Shunyatayan Pratagarupang Yadarupang Sa Shunyata Yashunyata Tadarupang Evameva Vedana Sankhya Sanskara Vijnanam Iha Shariputra Sarvadharma Shunyata Lakshana Anutpana Aniruddha Amala Avimala Anuna Aparipurna. So this is the first few verses of the Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra in Sanskrit, the language it was originally written down in. Prajnaparamita Hridaya means the heart of the perfection of wisdom. The perfection of wisdom literature is vast, but this is the heart of it. This is the sort of heart essence of the wisdom that has gone beyond words. And I wanted you just to have a flavour of what the original sutra might have sounded like. I mean, obviously, I don't know how ancient Indian Buddhists chanted Sanskrit. This is the way I've learned it from my teacher, from Sangha Night. He taught it to me personally. And I love chanting this in Sanskrit. In India, in our Sangha, in India, they chant the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit in their pujas. They don't do it in English. There's a kind of richness, I think, to the Sanskrit words, which no English rendering could possibly convey. And I'm going to say a little bit about this sutra and to address the topic of wisdom beyond words. So it begins with homage to the blessed, noble Prajnaparamita. Om Namo Bhagavate Arya Prajnaparamithaya. So first of all, if you're going to discover wisdom, you need to pay homage. You need to get into a mood of reverence, of looking up, of realizing you don't have wisdom, or that your wisdom is not as complete as it could be. This is very, very traditional in Buddhism, that before you can really learn anything, you have to realize that you're not complete, that you have to realize that your cup needs to be empty, if you like. It's no good having a full cup and expecting more to be put into the cup. You've got to have an empty cup, and that means that you've got to be willing to learn, willing to look up, to learn from those who are wise. And so it's a paying homage, and it's a paying homage to the blessed noble Prajnaparamita. This grammatically in Sanskrit is feminine. And what seemed to develop in Indian Buddhist tradition, and we don't know what came first, the grammar or the imagery, Prajnaparamita becomes a goddess. She becomes embodied in a number of different forms. Perhaps the most prominent is a very regal, golden yellow goddess holding in the teaching mudra with lotus blossoms, holding lotus blossoms which hold the books of the Prajnaparamita by her shoulders. And there's all sorts of reflections on why is it that this wisdom beyond words is turned into a goddess. And some people say, oh, it's mother goddess worship breaking out in Buddhism, which is nonsense. It's much more of an archetype of the transcendental, of that which is beyond all language. And perhaps it's better to think of this is a mystery. This is pointing to the elusiveness of the perfection of wisdom. She's a very regal figure, not a figure that you can sort of appropriate. Perfection of wisdom can't be appropriated. In the Heart Sutra, it talks about you can't even attain wisdom. Attainment can be a big deal for people. How do I attain this particular state? But the perfection of wisdom loves saying it's not attainable. It's elusive. It's something that slips through your fingers. So the mode that you need to get into when you approach the perfection of wisdom beyond words, is profound receptivity, profound openness, and realize that you're entering into a mystery. You're entering into an entirely different realm. Sometimes the word wisdom, we associate it so much with intellect, not that developing intellect is a bad thing, it's a good thing, a necessary thing. But you have to let go of that even and move into this openness to that which can't be grasped. So homage to the blessed, the noble Prajnaparamita. And then Avalokiteshvara, the noble Bodhisattva, was coursing in the deep course of the Prajnaparamita, of the wisdom that has gone beyond. He looked down and saw only 5 skandhas, and he saw that their nature was empty. So the sutra, having paid homage to the perfection of wisdom, we're introduced to a figure. We're introduced to the bodhisattva, the archetype of the archetype of enlightened compassion, Mahakarunika, the greatly compassionate one, Avalokiteshvara. This is a very significant detail in this sutra because Avalokiteshvara is supremely associated with compassionate activity. But here he is depicted as coursing in the deep course of wisdom. So you can't separate out compassion from wisdom. You can't separate out compassionate activity from wisdom, and you can't separate out wisdom from compassion. This is very, very important. As we'll see, the Heart Sutra is compassion speaking, compassion communicating, and it will completely change our ideas of wisdom and compassion to reflect that this sutra is given by Avalokiteshvara. So Avalokiteshvara, the noble bodhisattva, was coursing in the deep course of the Prajnaparamita. This is a classic sort of Sanskrit expression. Arya Avalokiteshvara bodhisattva gambhirang prajnaparamita chariyang charamana. But look what's being said here. There's no mention of attainment. It's all movement. Charyang charamana. You might be aware that us order members, our ordination is called a dharmachari or dharmacharini ordination. This word chari means practicing, coursing, living, moving, training, has all these meanings. But the whole idea is a kind of movement, a whole idea of a sense of sort of moving through the Dharma. The Dharma is not something outside of you. It's got to be inside of you as well. It's like being immersed in a great ocean. And here Avalokiteshvara is moving through the profound course of the perfection of wisdom. This is, again, a very, very different way of thinking about wisdom. Very, very different. There's no idea that wisdom is something to keep in your head. Wisdom is an entire realm in which you operate. It's reality itself. It's the way things are. He's moving through that all the time, inside, outside. It's all the perfection of wisdom. And then there's this word gambhira, which is translated here as deep, can also mean profound. It's a very, very important word. Really important to keep this in mind, because as we go on in the Heart Sutra, we're going to be introduced to this word emptiness, which can be very, very misleading. If you know a bit about Buddhism, you might have read this term emptiness. It's a bit like the word not self. And the great danger for us Westerners is to interpret that nihilistically and to not see the real meaning of what this emptiness is pointing to. The word gambhira helps us to avoid that. Reality is deep and profound, as deep as the deepest ocean. Actually, it's fathomless. If you're going to start opening up to the wisdom beyond words, you've got to have this sense of the profound nature of things, that your intellect will go so far and it won't go any further. And you just have to contemplate the mystery, just like you're coming up to a great ocean. You can get up to the shoreline, but then there's this great ocean before you of profound depth. And the only way you're going to have any sense of that is if you plunge into it, if you move into it. Sometimes the perfection of wisdom is called the Gambhira Yana, the way of the deep, the way of the profound, the deep vehicle, the profound vehicle. So keep that notion in mind, that we're looking for the deepest depths of things. So Avalokiteshvara looked down. Avalokiteshvara, one of the meanings of Avalokita is to look down. So you've got an interesting mix of metaphors. You've got depth and profundity, and looking down. I think that's very good, that you've got that almost mixture of metaphors. That does something to your mind already. He's moving in the depths, he looks down. And what he sees from the heights of wisdom, the depths of wisdom, are the 5 skandhas. So I'm not going to go spend too much on the 5 skandhas. This is a classic Buddhist analysis of the human personality, the human being. It's made up of rupa, which is the whole sort of bodily, physical dimension of things, inside and outside. There's Vedana, or feeling, so it's the feeling, tone, pleasure, pain, or no particular feeling in relation to sensations. There's Sangha, which is recognition or interpretation, labeling, if you like, what's going on. There's Samskaras, which is volitional activity, the motivations, the volitions that get going when you've labeled, even though you've mislabeled, what's happening. And then there's consciousness, which is the overall sort of state of awareness in relation to, these events that are taking place. When the Buddha originally taught the 5 skandhas, it was very much as a meditation, very much a method for undoing any kind of notion of a fixed and unchanging self, which obstructs any sense of development in the Dharma. That view that I'm this, I can't change. Yeah, I get angry. Well, I can't change that. Yeah, I'm greedy. I can't change that. The skandhas are a meditation to undo any idea of fixing yourself. So it was originally there to loosen you up. Over time, the skandhas become the object of a sort of scholastic project. Over time, you can read the Buddhist masters kind of analysing everything endlessly under the different headings of the skandhas, and you lose the sort of will to live as you pour through these things. So what Avalokiteshvara is saying, no, even this analysis, useful though it is, this analysis itself is empty. You have to let go even of the analysis. You have to let go of all of those notions. In other words, you have to keep moving. Some translators translate Prajnaparamita as the leaping wisdom. The leaping wisdom, because it literally means the wisdom that carries you across to the other shore. So it has this sense of, whatever Buddhist ideas you have, you remember why you have them. They're not there as dogmas. They're not there as, slogans and ideologies to kind of shout at people. They're there to liberate. They're there and you've got to get the spirit of them, the inner meaning of them to really understand what they're for. So he sees that these skandhas are empty. And then the next line is Iha Shariputra. Here Shariputra. So another figure has been introduced into this sutra. There's a longer Heart Sutra, which sort of, in a way, fills out the characters a bit more, but this is the shorter Heart Sutra. So Avalokiteshvara starts to talk to somebody called Shariputra. Shariputra is actually one of the Buddha's main disciples. He's an arahant, but he's not, in the context of this sutra, he's not really the historical figure. In a way, he's a symbol. He's a symbol of somebody at a certain level of understanding. They've got so far in their spiritual practice, in their insight and understanding, particularly through their engagement with classical, Buddhist exposition and so on, like the skandhas. But they need to go further. Avalokiteshvara represents that further dimension. In Buddhist iconography, in Buddhist art, Avalokiteshvara is depicted as an eternal youth, very androgynous looking. He's this depiction of a figure transcending time. So in this state of eternal youth, untouched, if you like, by the ravages of time. Whereas Shariputra and the other arahants are depicted as old men with lined faces and bald heads, and they're defined by, the physicality of aging. So this is a really interesting image. You've got sort of eternity communicating with time. What does William Blake say? Eternity is in love with the productions of time, something like that. So Avalokiteshvara wants to get through that dimension out of time, wants to get through to us in time. Shariputra is really us, if you like. And it's that higher dimension trying to break through, trying to introduce us to a very, very different way of seeing the world, however far we have come. So then we get the classic sayings. This is the sort of essence of the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, and that very emptiness is form. Emptiness does not differ from form. Form does not differ from emptiness. Whatever is form, that is emptiness. Whatever is emptiness, that is form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness. So this is Avalokiteshvara's communication to Shariputra. And it is important, I think, to see it as a communication. I mean, one way I like to read the Heart Sutra is to think of Avalokiteshvara actually talking about the perceptual situation, as it's called, with Shariputra. So there's Avalokiteshvara talking to someone, communicating with someone. And one of the things I think is going on is when he's saying form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form, it's rather like saying, actually, there is no difference between you and me. It's not just some abstraction of form. The form is the person. The form is the person before you. So one of the things Avalokiteshvara is doing is breaking down the division between self and other, subject and object, grasper and grasp, by saying, well, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. This is actually what happens in real communication. I don't mean the delivery of information, but I mean real communication. Those moments when you're with another person or with another group of people and you're really attentive to one another, really attentive. You're really listening to one another and you're really hearing what the other says. And when you speak, you're really aware of the people you're speaking to. There's an emotional aspect to that. There's a cognitive aspect to that. There's a volitional aspect to that. But in one way or another, you're fully present to one another. Sangha calls this a vital mutual responsiveness. A vital mutual responsiveness. He says that's what Sangha is. A vital mutual responsiveness, a common exploration of the spiritual world in full harmony and full honesty. When you have that kind of communication, for a moment, you can actually start to experience form being no other than emptiness, and emptiness being no other than form, because you're no longer in those moments static entities, separated out. Something else is invoked, if you like. There's a kind of softening of self and other. Sure, even without knowing anything about Buddhism, anything about the Heart Sutra, you've probably tasted those moments. You've enjoyed their moments. It's what human beings do. It's what human beings should be doing. The Dharma, as in so many other areas, is just pointing to what is deeply human in us. And one of the areas is communication and friendship, those moments where for a while you transcend that sense of separateness and you enter into that liberated space where you can sort of, really genuinely imagine what it is to be another. to see the world as they see it, as they in turn are seeing the world as you see it. So I think it's very important when you look at the Heart Sutra that you realize it is a communication. It's Avalokiteshvara bringing on somebody less developed into this realm of the wisdom which is beyond words. It's very interesting, I mean, to look at it that way, but we can look at everything in this way. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. It's something to reflect on as you go around, as you live your life. I mentioned being in the botanics today with Arya Dasa. We've got an interesting experience because there was one absolutely perfect magnolia. It's just this incredible white, such a pure white. And as far as one could make out, there was no fading yet against the blue sky. You know, and I was immediately sort of reminded of Rupa Shunyata. The blue sky is so often a symbol of Shunyata. And, you know, I could really see the form because of the blue sky that it was against. The form was sort of lit up, you know, by the blue and the brilliance of the sun. And it had that kind of translucent quality. It was alive, it was living. It's another aspect, I think, of Shunyata is that it's the living, you know, quality of things, if you like. But then a bit before that, we were a bit late for some of the magnolias, weren't we? You know, some of the early ones we saw, they were sadly fading. And I'm always reminded when I see flowers at their fullest, and we've got the lovely cherry blossoms out in, whoever gave us that cherry, whoever planted it and tended it with a garden team. I mean, salutations. I mean, that is such a magnificent experience to see that. But, you know, there is this tremendous sort of poignancy, isn't there, with flowers. I think there's a saying of Heidegger, isn't there, that the German existentialist, that being, his word for reality, being with a capital B, being never fully flowers. Being never fully flowers. And it's so true, isn't it? Because right at the peak of something opening and being so wonderful, it's already fading. That form is already becoming empty. You know, it has to. Otherwise, it would never have that gorgeous loveliness if it wasn't actually becoming empty, if it didn't do that. So form and emptiness, meditating on form and emptiness is also a meditation on impermanence, on the arising and ceasing of everything. In a way, this language of form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form, is just a restatement of a much earlier Buddhist insight of the Buddha himself into the truth that whatever arises passes away. Whatever arises passes away. Very simple, we know that. But actually arising and passing away are going on simultaneously. They're both happening. There's always arising, passing. You can't actually separate them out. There's always processes coming into being, going out of being, coming into being, going out of being. You can't possibly hold that in your mind as an idea. You know, it's quite good sometimes when you're doing the mindfulness of breathing. Let's say you get very concentrated in mindfulness of breathing and maybe you don't quite know what to do next. Look for the arising and the passing of the breath. I defy you to tell me where it starts and where it ends. You know, it's so mysterious actually when you really start to focus in on the arising and passing away of the breath. The moving, the breath coming into being, going out of being, to use that sort of language, and all the attendant processes. You start to discover, hang on, this arising and passing, this conditioned co-production, this dependent arising is a profound mystery. It's a profound mystery. No one set of words can possibly hold it. And you just have to open to, you know, that emptiness in a way. And it's very, very important to do that because people want easy solutions. We want easy solutions. In Buddhist tradition, there's a lot of concern about eternalists and nihilists. These are the great extremes that you can go to in your philosophy, whether or not you're a philosopher. We've all got eternalistic and nihilistic tendencies. We've all got these tendencies of believing in, continued existence, continued fixed existence, eternalism, or ultimate non-existence, nihilism. Both are false. Both are, in a way, incredibly unintelligent, although we all do it, solutions to the mystery of existence. So that feeling sometimes, when let's say, I haven't done this for a while, but when I used to fall in love with people, thankfully I haven't done that for a while. I hope I never do. There is that incredible sense about when you fall in love with somebody that you're on the brink of eternity, aren't you? Do you remember that? Is that just me? Am I being daft? I don't think so. That sort of sense that this beautiful person, you endow with a kind of legend and a myth and a story. Well, I do this. And a whole kind of thing. You really are on the brink of heaven, and it will last forever. And even though your friends are saying, don't go there. It's going to end in tears, Padmavajra, and no, you don't understand. You don't understand. You don't see her as I do, all that. And of course, I'm just ignoring endings. I'm ignoring the fact that things change. I'm absolutely ignoring other possibilities. There's this sort of idea somewhere of some eternal happiness that and it's very much an idea of that, and not noticing the other possibilities, the other side of things, the passing away of things. Similarly, when the wonderful relationship comes to an end, and that's very painful, you just want to close down, don't you? You'd really like it, if there was nothing. That feeling, those attempts for there to be nothing. The sort of, you just want to close everything down. You want non-being because being is so painful. I think, there's all sorts of ways in which we do that. You just numb yourself. Again, it's impossible. You can't make nothing. That's not possible. Even suicide, according to Buddhist tradition, well, that doesn't make it all go away because you just get reborn again. The complexity returns. So that's too easy. Much, much too easy to think that you can sort of get out of it just like that. That's just not going to happen. If it was like that, well, I'm sure anyway, let's not go there. But much, much too easy. No, life has this great richness of arising and passing away. That's the way it is, form and emptiness and form. And what we need to do, if we're going to practice this wisdom beyond words, is enter into that as fully as possible. That's what Dharma practice is. It's living that life where, you're taking it absolutely seriously. You are meditating every day. You are giving everything to the practice of the precepts. You are doing everything you can, to live a life of a good life that benefits others. But there's also part of you realizing, hang on, it arises, it passes away. You hold to it lightly, in other words. There's a lightness to your engagement, to your practice. It's said of bodhisattvas, great bodhisattvas like Avalokiteshvara, and this is often depicted in Buddhist art, that they practice lila. You see forms of Avalokiteshvara. Is there one here? No. And he's in what's called the Raja Lila posture. Royal ease, looking incredibly relaxed. And that's the expression of the life of form being no different from emptiness. There's this tremendous engagement with life. with communicating with people like Shariputra are really involved, really concerned with the sufferings of the world. And yet, there's also this constant awareness of the maya, the illusory nature of all this. It arises, it passes. This is the sort of mystery that we have to practice absolutely seriously in the way we live and practice, with a tremendous sense of humour, particularly about ourselves, a tremendous sense of play and a lightness of touch, aware of things arising and passing away. This is the Bodhisattva path. So it's very important to remember this when you hear this word compassion. I think sometimes people interpret it as a kind of busybody, that you're running around saving beings, seeing lots of people, putting everything right, getting burnt out, feeling sorry for yourself and all the rest of it. That isn't Buddhist compassion. Buddhist compassion might just be sitting, apparently doing nothing, having an extraordinary effect on the world around you. It's quite possible for Buddhist compassion to be like that. For it to be an act of being, if you like, rather than of doing. So this is, I've got to start winding up in a minute. So this is the way the Heart Sutra opens. So Avalokiteshvara is trying to introduce Shariputra to this entirely different way of seeing the world. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The sutra goes on. I won't read it all because, you can have access to this. When you come to the puja next week, you'll be doing the Heart Sutra, I think, won't you? So you'll hear the whole sutra chanted. But I want to sort of move on to the conclusion. Where does the Heart Sutra go? I'll read the last few verses. Therefore, Shariputra, not holding to attainment, a bodhisattva, through having relied on the perfection of wisdom, dwells with heart unobstructed. In the absence of an obstructed heart, he does not tremble, and overcoming all wrong views, finally attains nirvana. So this is where the perfection of wisdom leads you. It leads you to an unobstructed heart. And if your heart is unobstructed, you will not tremble. There will be no fear. It's a big, big theme in Buddhist tradition. Fear is such a such a deep part of us. We talk about greed, hatred, and delusion usually as the three roots, but you should add fear too. Fear of losing what you love, fear of gaining what you don't love, what you hate, what you don't like. It's a big part of the human condition. It's funny, last week, I got 2 letters from friends embarrassed to admit their fear. All sorts of fears, about, meeting with lots of people. That's why they weren't coming on retreat, because they didn't want to see lots of people and things like that. Fear of this, fear of that. And really sort of feeling bad about that. And I said, well, it's part of the human condition. Fear is part of the human condition. It must be. Why is it that we call the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha refuges? They protect. They protect from fear. They're what you can rely on. You need to go, if you're going to really come to the end of fear, you have to be relying on this perfection of wisdom, on this unobstructed heart. So don't feel bad if you feel fearful. It's quite hard, I think, for us to admit our fears sometimes. Don't. It's part of the human condition. But start searching for that on which you can truly rely. Paradoxically, opening up to the arising and ceasing of things, to its very fragility, is the beginning of becoming fearless. Because you develop that unobstructed heart in relation to the ever-changingness of the world around you. All those who appear as Buddhas in the 3 periods of time awake fully to supreme and perfect enlightenment through relying on the perfection of wisdom. And then finally, there's a final teaching to make the perfection of wisdom really boiled down to something really essential, even more essential than the words. Avalokiteshvara says, therefore, one should know the perfection of wisdom as the great mantra. A mantra is a sound symbol, a sound of protection. The great mantra, the mantra of great knowledge, the supreme mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the layer of all suffering. In truth, it does not deceive. The perfection of wisdom herself has given this mantra. This is really, really interesting, to think of it like this. If you ever take up the study of the Heart Sutra, if what I've said this evening appeals to you, and you can follow it up, read Sangharakshita's commentary on the Heart Sutra in Wisdom Beyond Words. He takes you through the different stages of emptiness, the different stages of realization. But they can be boiled down to this great mantra, so that you can meditate on this mantra to remember moving in the deep course of the perfection of wisdom that has gone beyond all words. You can remember Avalokiteshvara's profound meditation and communication with Shariputra. It can be translated, this mantra, as gone beyond, gone altogether beyond. Great awakening. It is so. Which in Sanskrit is Gate Gate Pada Gate Pada Sangate Bodhi Swaha Gate Gate Pada Gate Pada Sangate Bodhi Swaha Gate Gate Pada Gate Pada Sangate Bodhi Swaha Iti prajna paramita hridayam samatram, which means the perfection of wisdom, which is the heart of the perfection of wisdom, is finished. And this talk is finished.